Hello and welcome back to the Schooner Pod. I'm Bobby Howard. With me today, we've got Jameson Maxwell, Ty Lee, and we're here to talk about a little bit of what's gone down over the week. Sooners obviously off because, didn't have a game to play, but a lot's happened, so we're going to get right down to it. Oklahoma will play Arizona in the Alamo Bowl, as expected, on December 28th, I believe. 8:15 p.m. So super late game there. Jameson, I'm sure you love that.
I'll be in Oklahoma, baby, so it doesn't matter. I'll be on Central
Yeah,
Time.
there we go. Local time. Love to hear it. So yeah, certainly not what people wanted to hear. I think there was a little bit of hope for a New Year's Six Bowl. We'll kind of talk about that later, as well as the playoff and all the controversy there. But and we'll obviously dive into Arizona as we get closer to the actual game, have a little bit more time to research. Because Arizona feels like a team that kind of came out of nowhere this year. Ranked 14th in the country right now. Jed Fish has these guys absolutely rolling. Jameson, just want to ask you right now, what are your first impressions of Arizona?
Yeah, at first, we have this, opinion of Arizona these past couple years as a trash football program. And then whenever they lost to Mississippi State, the second game of the season, I was like, you know what? Good for them. They played it close, but I really didn't know too much about this Arizona football team. But what we saw for the rest of the season was honestly really impressive. The other two losses after that Mississippi State loss to Washington and USC, both one score losses, losing to Washington by 7, USC only by 2, and that came down to the end. They've had a really good game, but they're hot right now. And I feel like a lot of OU fans will be looking at this. And I feel like I've already said it in this podcast, thinking like, oh, if we beat Arizona, we were supposed to beat Arizona. This is going to be a sneaky team, and we should not, underappreciate them at all.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. This does kind of have a same kind of feeling of like, well, Arizona's scrappy. They'll have a lot of buy-in. This is a big deal for them. And for OU, it has to feel a little flat. So we'll see how they handle things going forward. Obviously, a bowl win would be big after going 5-7 last year, but we'll see. Ty, your thoughts on Arizona? I know you're down there right now. So I'm not sure if the Wildcats have been talking a lot down there in Phoenix or not, but overall, what are your thoughts on the Wildcats here?
No one actually goes to. So everyone that goes to the Arizona schools is just from California, and then everyone that lives here is just from the Midwest. And I'm not even remotely joking. Like I think I work with one ASU grad. I work with multiple like Minnesota and University of Wisconsin grads. And I work with a bunch of ASU grads, but they're all from California. So, yeah, I didn't know. I don't know if they have any fans, actually, is what I'm getting at. Maybe in Tucson. I don't know. They might have fans in Tucson. But yeah, so not really, a whole lot of pressure there. But, like we touched on a second ago, this Arizona team is just kind of a team that beat expectations. They went out and they won every game that they were supposed to win outside of Utah. I think that Utah game was obviously an upset, but yeah, they have an impressive record. I mean, that loss to USC is kind of embarrassing if you consider what this Arizona team is supposed to be and what we saw of that USC team. But that was in overtime. And then again, Mississippi State, their loss was in overtime. So they had that one loss in regulation, and that was to, a playoff team by one score. So they certainly have a fairly impressive resume. It's not, I don't think it's a bad hand at all. I know there's some arguments that we're about to get into of OU being snubbed, but I think, if I look at Arizona's record versus ours, obviously we have that win against Texas that we can hang our hats on a little bit. But I mean, they have wins against Utah, UCLA. Some will say Oregon State is a good win, not me. Right. And
I knew that was coming.
So
of course, yeah.
Yeah,
No.
they are a good team. And like Jimmy in the comments said, and like you sort of alluded to, Bobby, this is, I think, much of a bigger deal game for Arizona. I mean, they can come in and really say, hey, look at us. This is an exciting season for us. Let's get in on beating OU as we join the Big 12. What's more Big 12 than that at this point? And let's ride high versus OU. Hopefully we've not given up, but I think there is a bit of that belief that the season is pretty much over at this point on our end.
Yeah, I mean, this is a classic Big 12 SEC matchup right here, OU and Arizona.
Oh, God.
But yeah, college football is about to be real weird. But no, I think Arizona's going to come into this thing hot, really trying to win. I really like their coach Jed Fish. I think he is exactly the type of coach that you don't want to see in a bowl game because they're going to come out firing. I feel like OU though, like I'd be a little surprised if we saw opt-outs, Dylan Gabriel coming back for one last ride.
He opts out.
No, I
why
don't
would
see
he
him
why would
opting
he
out.
opt out? Is he trying to prepare himself for the
He's going to opt out to prepare himself to be our quarterback next year.
No.
Quit.
No, probably
Next question.
Yeah, Gabriel's not opting out. Drake Stoops is not opting out. They're gonna be, try to kick ass, go out on top one last time. So I think it'll be a really good game. I'm really excited. And it's interesting because OU and Arizona really don't have a deep football history. They've played a couple times in basketball in the NCAA tournament, but overall only a home and home series in the late 80s, including a 6-3 Arizona win in 1989 at home in Gary Gibbs's first year. 1982 in the chat's talking about that. And I actually talked to my dad about this matchup when we thought it would be Arizona, and he said, yeah, I was at that game in Tucson, and his grandfather told him after that game, I think the Arizona fans are happy this one's over. So just hopefully, look, I think we can say this for sure. We're not going to get a 6-3 game. That I think we could rule that one out, which is good.
It's gonna be really high scoring. Hopefully, because we get to see a little bit of this Seth Luttrell scheme get put in. As Ty laughs a little bit, it should be not too much different, but it should be something fun for OU fans to look forward to.
Maybe. Right. He's not in charge of special teams. Maybe Seth Luttrell will stop giving Gavin Freeman chances, and we might score sometimes.
I just realized we haven't had a chance to talk about Luttrell. Luttrell and Joe John Finley getting named co-offensive coordinators, because I feel like that was like kind of not a surprise.
We discussed. They released pretty much right after.
Whenever we were on the pod, it was kind of like an understood thing. People had pipe dreams. Oh my God. And I've heard it all the time on a lot of OU media. It's like, oh, we should hire these people, or these are the candidates. Come on, read the freaking writing on the wall. Yeah. It was always Seth Luttrell. And I'm not playing hindsight. I've been saying this since the middle of the season.
We were calling for Luttrell like when we wanted Levy out, like when we were talking about transition periods then. So it made sense. It always made sense. I do want to say, Jameson, were you surprised to hear Joe John Finley getting the co-offensive coordinator nod?
Yeah, it seems like so they really wanted to keep him. And I kind of made a note about the tight ends saying like, I won't be hurt if he's lost. But he probably just didn't have much good to work with, Ty, in terms of his tight end room. Seems like he's a pretty good guy, and obviously as an OU legacy, you want to treat them. So they had to give him a bag to keep him, not get him on Mississippi State staff, because I guarantee you Levy wanted him on Mississippi State staff. Probably could have tried to make him full-time offensive coordinator. Problem is, Jeff Levy would have been the play caller, and he still wouldn't have had that much autonomy to begin with, even if he did have a title in Mississippi State. So there wouldn't have been much respect with it from the beginning. So we just added a little extra money, and he got to stay at his, alma mater. I think that's really all it is. I think they believe in him, but also at the same time, they just didn't want to lose him.
Yeah, I mean, and I gotta say, Luttrell being the offensive coordinator, but not a co-offensive coordinator. That's kind of funny. You would assume that both of them were co's. Yeah, it's weird. It's kind of like an assistant to the regional manager sort of thing. I guess if we're talking, I don't know, titles, but ultimately I'm excited about it. I don't think it's going to be a too many cooks situation. Luttrell's the guy in charge. I like it a lot. A lot of really good experience as a play caller. Obviously head coaching experience as well, led North Texas to some of their best times. So pretty great stuff.
Can I make one more note about this Arizona football team? And I feel like that we already said it, but I kind of want to reframe it. OU fans are disappointed because usually we like to go against a large historic football program, ones with fans that really like come at your throat whenever you can at least have some fun in the weeks leading up to it. Arizona is a basketball school. and their football program has been poor recently, but it's picking up. It's absolutely picking up, and I've really, really been impressed with what they've done this year. But in that kind of scenario, and I mentioned this in the last pod, it is a bad scenario for OU to be in, because we are, even though this is a very good, I feel like very close, even matchup from the way both teams have been playing recently, to where if OU wins, they'll be like, oh, they did what they did. They're supposed to do this. They beat Arizona and they're OU. Of course, they should do this. But in reality, this should be a good game. It should be hard fought. And then no matter which way it goes, I think we shouldn't damn OU if they were to lose. Oh, they lost to Arizona. That's gross. This Arizona football team is a good football team. And I'm not hedging right now in the slightest. I just want to remind OU fans, what's your preconceived notions for this Arizona football team? It's different this year.
Absolutely.
I think that's fair. I think this might be a segue too into our next points. I think this Arizona team, 9 times out of 10 would beat Ole Miss and Penn State, probably. Well, maybe not 9 times out of 10.
I don't know about that. I think that's a little
okay. All right, let's not start defending Penn State.
I think they could beat them.
They could. 9 times out of 10 is that's quite the hyperbole.
Better team is a better way to word that. They wouldn't beat them 9 times out of 10.
No, here's the thing. I believe more so. I feel like Penn State gets a lot of shit from you and Blake, Ty.
Yeah, because they're not good.
I think this Penn State team is set up to beat teams like Arizona really well. They're not set up to beat teams that are top 10 in the country teams, though, because they've got a really stellar defense. Their offense can function whenever they're playing against not as good defenses, but whenever they play really good opponents, they crumple. Is that the word? Crumple? Is that a word?
Crumble? I don't know.
Crumble? I don't know. I don't know.
Crumple is a word, but it's like
I think I combined 2 words. It was like a Rickyism from Trailer Park Boys.
Yeah, but crumple is a word, but it's like crumpling a piece of paper.
I think that's what I was going for. So that is the word I was going for.
That works. That kind of works, I think.
But I don't know. Maybe I was going for crumble. Whatever. Carry on.
They are crumpled.
Yeah.
Yes, but I think I was going for crumble, but I was thinking about crumple.
Yeah,
no,
I see what you're
Whatever.
We're moving on. I think Arizona is going to be a really good challenge. Looking forward to diving into them deeper and learning about them a lot more. So yeah, let's talk about what could have been. And I think with how things worked this weekend, SMU beating Tulane being massive, Florida State getting left out of the college football playoff, and not providing 2 ACC teams, a spot. It seemed like OU was pretty set up to possibly get into a New Year's Six bowl, but alas, no movement whatsoever. Penn State, Missouri, and Ole Miss all got in, and it's questionable. If you look at the resumes, it's a little bit frustrating, a little bit disheartening, because, just look at the wins here. Ole Miss's best win was probably Tulane. Missouri's best win was, I guess, Tennessee. And then Penn State's best win was Iowa. So, to me, I feel like we kind of got to the committee got to this place just by who had better losses, which to me is just a little bit frustrating, because I think Oklahoma is better than all of these teams, and I think they have a better resume, frankly.
I'm not trying to be the bad guy here, but I think objectively Penn State 100%. This is rare that you're going to find me defending Penn State, but
okay.
Both the teams that Penn State lost to realistically maybe could have gone to the playoff. I don't know. I don't know.
One of them actually did.
Obviously OU with the Texas win is a big deal, but you can't ignore, because you have to look at OU's wins too, right? Like that win over Cincinnati, not exactly convincing. That win over Central Florida, not exactly convincing. Like OU's entire resume, I don't know, is very respectable. I think Ole Miss is riding on a lot of SEC. You want to talk about SEC bias?
Oh yeah.
The credit that this Ole Miss team is getting is absurd. Ole Miss should not be in this discussion whatsoever, let alone actually getting a bit. I cannot wrap my head around that. Missouri, I don't know, but I think Penn State, realistically, they did not do that poorly against some very, very good teams. Obviously, a loss is a loss at the end of the day. We'll get into that as we get into the wider CFP discussion. But I don't know. I don't know, in my opinion, that I can get on board with OU being snubbed from the NY6 necessarily.
Here's what I think really just went down. And they had the rankings set because they had bumped OU back after really bad losses. And the way people think, they are going to notice the negative more than the positive. And after our losses to Oklahoma State and Kansas, that was not good in their minds. And they took us back a lot for that. Having those two sets of losses, back to back, really can change the views of this Oklahoma football team. They pushed us so far back that we weren't able to do anything convincing enough in the time being to hop over one of those teams that we got pushed so far back. And since we didn't play in like a Big 12 championship in this final week, I don't know why fans were expecting to see them to take a jump up in the rankings. We hadn't done anything in that week before to give them a higher ranking. So they just kept things pat from where they were in the past, even though, our quality win is now in the playoffs and bumped themselves up 4 spots. So I think it's just they want to be malleable with their opinions of teams that go to conference championships, but they won't be malleable with the strength of schedule that comes downstream after those championship games.
I get that. I think for me, SMU winning was the biggest variable of like changing things, because now they're ranked. Now they should have been, I think, honestly, in the New Year Six as well. I think, playing OU, playing TCU is way, the fact that they went out and played those games on the road, I think that's more valuable than Liberty going undefeated in the Conference USA. So frankly, I think SMU change things a bit. I think these teams are pretty close, all things considered, but I think OU just flat out a little bit better. I mean, if you think about those losses, I mean, they look bad, in retrospect, and we think about it, at the time even, but it was an 8-4 Kansas that we lost by 5 on the road, and we lost Oklahoma State by 3. So it's a combined 8 points. Like, they weren't really that atrocious. They were winnable, they were attainable, but it's not like it's not like an appalling OSU losing the UCF level loss.
Yeah, but the eye test did look pretty bad. Those losses were much worse than what the scoreboard showed.
Yeah, because they weren't playing up to their top capability. I get that, and I don't know. I've go ahead, Ty.
I was gonna say I didn't mean to cut you off there, but I feel like for eye test too, right? Like, again, with the Penn State didn't necessarily look that bad against anyone. Like, I hate to have to keep bringing it up, but like OU looked stank against BYU. Like, we looked, what the heck is going on against Cincinnati? And we look like just someone got confused and we forgot to lose against Central Florida, even though we were doing everything we could to lose. So I feel like there's tremendous potential. And then again, I think on this podcast, we're generally very anti-Levy, but I think obviously opinion of him as a play caller is fairly high around college football.
Oh, yeah.
And you have to consider that people are looking at that and going, hey, their offensive coordinator is now also gone. Like, I'm not sure if I'm really going to bet on this team, not to jump on the we got Florida Stated thing here, but loss of personnel on the coaching side, I think probably was considered more than we're realizing.
I guarantee you that was a big discussion because our defense has not looked good at the end of the season and our offense has been holding us up. And obviously Oklahoma has a reputation, and they're like, what's going to make me be convinced that Oklahoma's offense, the only thing that was going well for them, is going to go well still because they just lost their offensive coordinator?
Yeah, I get that, but I think that's a horrible way of handling things, but obviously that's the way they do it. I think, just to me, it comes down to the resume, it comes down to the facts. OU has the best win in college football. We have the only team that's lost, that the highest ranked one-loss team in the country has that loss to Oklahoma. So to me, I think that I look at wins. I look at what you've done on the field, what you've accomplished, but I see where they're coming from. So, yeah,
I think we deserve it, but I don't think that OU fans should have expected it from what we'd seen with the rankings this year.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I wasn't like too shocked or anything, but I felt like OU probably had a better chance than the committee really gave us. But anyways, let's talk about some teams who actually a team that actually probably got pretty screwed.
Georgia.
We're
quit with that Georgia stuff.
No, we're pivoting on putting on our weekend spread hats a little bit here, and talking about the college football playoff. Probably the most controversial one by far. In fact, definitely by far. I think I've kind of described it as like the 14 playoffs, 2004 moment where someone who earned their way, truly kind of deserved it, got left out in Florida State. Number one, if you're under a rock, here's what it is. Number 1, Michigan, 2, Washington, 3, Texas, and then Alabama sneaking in at 4 after their big win over Georgia. Florida State, 13-0, left out in the rain here. And it's interesting as all this doesn't matter next year. We're moving to a 12 team. Florida State would be in just fine, and everything changes. But Jameson, I gotta ask, do you agree with the committee's decision here to put a 13-0 undefeated team who won all of their games, has had a good non-conference? Do you agree with that decision?
Yeah, here's the thing. It was going to be anger and turmoil around the country no matter who they picked. So they're like, oh, did they make the right decision? There's all these conversations about it. This was not going to work out no matter what. And obviously, the biggest thing here is not an anti-Florida State thing. I want to throw away that. I think the really biggest thing is they valued the head-to-head of Texas over Alabama. If Texas would have gone out and beaten Georgia this year instead of Alabama, I actually think Texas might have been left out. That's kind of I'm playing here. Just listen to me here. I think since Texas beat Alabama, there's no way that they could have been the ones to be left out and Alabama being, because they had a head-to-head, with 2 one-loss teams. So they had to put Texas in there. And there's a 0% chance they're leaving out the SEC champion. So, sorry, that leaves you Florida State.
Yeah, and I think it fundamentally just highlights the problem with 4. This was the scenario that we haven't really run into where every single Power 5 champion deserved it, genuinely. There have been years where that just isn't the case. And it frankly, I think it's tricky because it's hard. Can't leave out Texas if you're going to put in like you said. If you put in Alabama, can't leave out Texas. Can't put in Georgia and leave out Alabama. And it's annoying because
exactly.
They looked at
so that was the only. Yeah. This was the only way.
Yeah.
This was the only way for them to do it.
I mean, I think you just got to rip off the Band-Aid and leave out Alabama, honestly, because even though they are the SEC champ, they've struggled mightily at times. They were a play away from losing to Auburn, looked rough against South Florida, obviously have a loss, at home to Texas by 10. And to me, I don't think you can say I test when Alabama, outside of this Georgia win, hadn't really looked that impressive. But I get it. It's those 3 letters, SEC.
Here's one big thing, right? Because I think I'm generally on the side of Florida State here, but there is one thing to consider, I think, that I haven't heard said anywhere else. The criteria is 4 best teams. And I think when you're looking at seeding people for the national championship, I don't think anyone in their right mind thinks that FSU can compete for the national championship. I think the top 2 teams were appropriately seeded with Michigan and Washington. And I think no matter what you make the playoff, there's always going to be someone deserving who was left out, right? We turn this back a few years, and all of a sudden we're talking about like, oh, Florida State or Texas or Alabama or someone is being left out of the BCS and they're not getting to go play. When we expand to 12, there's going to be a year where there's an egregious, exclusion of a 13th place team. So I think that I'm on the side of Florida State in terms of they did everything that they needed to do. And I think that, losing their star quarterback, I really can't wrap my mind around how they were snubbed because, it's not a small market. It's not like they, had, a small market team to screw up. Florida State has won a national championship in the last 10 years, which is insane. They can't help that their schedule was unimpressive. Their best wins are against three
LSU.
Yeah.
Who is a 3-loss team?
Non-con. They played LSU in a non-con, and then they did the best they can what they were presented with a really bad ACC.
Right. And
but that's not even
you cannot damn Florida State schedule. I'm not going to listen to that.
No, I agree with you, Jameson, because go ahead, Ty.
Okay, they did the best with what they have. But I think what I was getting at was I think there's being way too much value put on them losing their quarterback. Like that wasn't the only piece that they had. Like I don't think any one of these. Well, Washington maybe if Penix goes down, you see a sort of a similar situation. But I just don't.
It'd be worse for Washington.
I don't see what's happening in the Florida State here. At the same time, I'm on the side of Florida State here, but I think realistically Florida State's going to get kind of embarrassed by Georgia. And when they do, there's not going to be a whole lot of like reasonable arguments to be made on behalf of Florida State if they can't beat this. I mean, if they go out and they convincingly beat Georgia, right? Or they even keep it close, even if they lose, but it's by like 7, then I'll say, okay, yeah, maybe they deserve to be in or whatever else. They probably would beat that team with their quarterback. If they go out and lose by a couple scores, then I don't think you can look back in hindsight and say that they got screwed up. I think you'll have to look back and say, okay, the committee did make the right decision, but I just don't. Again, for me, it all comes down to the fact that ultimately we're trying to select for the national champion, and I think the teams that realistically are going to win it ended up in the playoffs. So everything else is just kind of somebody didn't get to be fodder when they wanted to be.
Yeah, and I my thing is I hate that that's the way we decide a champion instead of letting them decide it on the
playoff.
Field. Yeah, well, no, not with the playoff, but with this kind of beauty pageant style of oh yeah, sure, you won all your games, but it's not enough. It's not enough to get into the top 4. I think that's really ridiculous. It's really frustrating. Especially when, Texas even had moments where they didn't really have the eye test. Washington had
Houston,
that too.
That Houston game was atrocious for Texas. They should have lost that game. It was a bad reffing. They put a horrible spot, screwed Houston over.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like, why are we damning Florida State for doing what these other teams have done?
It's because they're in the ACC. It's really what it is.
Yeah. And I gotta say, this is probably the end of Florida State in the ACC. If you're Florida State right now, you're rip-roaring mad. And I gotta say, this should end any single bit of conversation with anyone about the Big 12 being like, oh, well, you only left for money. There's no competitive. No, that move absolutely is the right move, because if OU was in the SEC, if OU played an SEC schedule and, put up, a 10-2 record, they would have been in the expanded playoff. They would be in the New Year's Six. Look what Ole Miss did. Look what Missouri did. And it provides such a competitive advantage, not only just branding wise, but, playing the teams you're playing, because you can't, like Jameson said, Florida State can't change the ACC. They can't change that. They scheduled everything right, and they still got screwed over.
I think there is again, I feel for Florida State here. I think Florida State should have gotten in over Alabama. Also, it is important to note, right? Florida State kind of made their bed here. They were invited to the SEC a couple times. They chose to stay in the ACC because they thought it was a better path to the national championship. That's just kind of a funny thing. But more, damningly, last year, Florida State voted against moving forward the 12-team playoff. Like they voted, and then the ACC voted to keep it a 4-team playoff this year. So it's like,
yeah, the
you can't
alliance.
necessarily be bad that they got what they voted for. So, that does have to be brought up. Like that is, I think, important context that they thought, oh, it's never going to happen to me because I'm a big brand. Like, I'm important. I can stay in this, conference that isn't respected as much when we have a completely, subjective selection process, and I can win out, and I don't want to have a tougher schedule. Like, I don't want it to be an expanded playoff until it absolutely has to. I'm going to vote against it and stay in this, objectively softer league when it's a subjective selection process. This is what happens.
Yeah, it's very unlikely that the way that the cards fell this season that we have this scenario. We really haven't had this scenario this whole time we've had the playoffs. So I understand why Florida State decided to keep the ACC. And obviously, in terms of basketball, ACC is in basketball is the SEC. So we can't forget about that. So, but like kind of rounding this out, I do feel remorse for Florida State. I think that this was the correct decision, and I understand other people will believe Alabama should have been the one that's left out, but I believe that this is the correct decision. But I feel remorse because it really does show that a lot of these people in the committee and a lot of people overall in college football are very tunnel visioned towards the offensive side of the ball. When you talk about football teams, a lot of the first times, even for the teams that are all very strong defenses, like say with Georgia last year, their defense had superstars all over the place. But guess what? I feel like we do it on this podcast. Who do we bring up first when we talk about Georgia? Stetson Bennett. We do it all the time. You bring up quarterbacks. We bring up AJ McCarron with those Alabama teams. Like, what are we doing? That's just the culture of college football. And that's what we have been bred and taught how to watch. So whenever we see third straight quarterback for Florida State and Jordan Travis taking 2 or 3 minutes just to get up 3 steps on stage at the ACC trophy ceremony, I feel like that we have a bias against that football team. And it's a shame because their defense is stellar. We don't talk about how good that football team looked on the defensive side of the ball versus a Louisville team who's looked really good this season. They made Jack Plummer look like a bigger bum than he usually is. And they really, really just shut them down. You know how hard it is for a defense to play that good when their offense is extremely anemic? I think that we need to give Florida State even more credit for that ACC championship win game because of what they had to do with out having a good quarterback. But unfortunately, like you said, Ty, it is the best teams, and Florida State just wasn't one of them.
Yeah. And that's really just overall the problem with 4. It was never the answer. It never made sense. And it's getting resolved, which is great. Because now, instead of Florida State getting screwed out of, making the playoff and, trying to compete for it, they'll just host. They'll get screwed out of a bye and host Liberty and Tallahassee. Like that is way better. And I think, to me, more than anything, this puts everything to rest. That age-old thing of, the regular season doesn't matter anymore in a 12 team, because it doesn't matter now. If this is the regular season mattering, then I mean that's just not the definition of mattering. They went 13-0 and don't have a chance to continue on. There's no other sport that just stops at 4. It's an invitational. It's not a playoff, and frankly, good riddance to this 4-team format, because it's not good. It's not competitive, and to me, you might lose a little bit of that impact when you lose a game on Saturdays in the fall, but you prevent having a quarterback say he wished he broke his leg earlier, so the committee, some shadow committee, thinks that his team's better. That is the most devastating thing I've ever seen an athlete say. It just absolutely devastating to me. So I'm fine. I'm happy to move on. I'm ready to move on into this new era of college football. I fully embrace it. I can't wait. But woof, what a brutal end to the 4-team playoff experiment.
Shout out to Florida fans who are having just a day today. Their two biggest rivals snubbed because George. I think and this is a bit of a funny segment, but I think any other year where you don't have this Florida State storyline, I think you make a fair argument that maybe Georgia got snubbed a little bit as well. I don't see how you can leave out the defending champ, right? Because why would you exclude
I don't care
Georgia?
what they did last year.
Because they lost. They lost in the one that mattered.
Yeah,
the game that mattered.
They essentially had a playoff game. They had a win or go home play, and they lost. So
same argument for Bama and Texas, then, though, is how
that was at the beginning of the season. This is the postseason.
So the regular season doesn't matter?
No, it does matter. But this is, we obviously take into account, and it's known that the committee says a championship game means more than a regular season game. They've said that year in, year out.
Well, I mean, especially when the other teams in college football dictate that there is no margin for error. We knew it was going to be tight, like across the board. No team had any wiggle room to screw up at all. I'll put it this way. If OU went undefeated, I think they'd get left out in this scenario. If you flip Texas and OU, Florida State goes in at 4.
No.
Because our non-conference... Hear me out. No. Because our regular schedule and our non-conference schedule is not enough. Frankly, that's my thought.
No, but our win versus Texas would have put us in.
I think we have the
twice. Yeah. I don't think Florida State would have got in over us if we're both undefeated.
Hypothetically beating Texas, does hypothetically beating Texas twice, and then unconvincing win against OSU, unconvincing win against Kansas, is that bigger or more than Florida State beating
you've
FSU,
created Washington?
Clemson? I created Washington.
See, because
that is true. That is exactly right.
We have the brand power. We have not that Florida State doesn't, but we would then have the brand power and the brand power on our opposing, on our wins as well. I don't think you would leave OU out in that situation.
But obviously, we need to put this conversation in the trash because this is so stupid. People are going to be listening.
I can go on.
You fans are talking about what if they were in the playoffs. This is ridiculous.
Well, no.
I get that.
I wasn't saying we deserve. No. I'm not saying we were close.
But what if butterfly effect, guys? Let's play butterfly effect.
What
if we would have gotten that fourth down?
No. I wasn't trying to do the butterfly effect thing. All I'm trying to say is the Big 12 schedule is not good, and I think that my point was because it's not good, the margin of error is that slim. And I think overall, it was going to be tough for anybody to make the college football playoff. And if you lose at big times, you lose at big times, and tough luck. That was the point. It wasn't to be like, oh, butterfly effect. What if, it was just
That's all we do on this pod.
I will say
not really.
that the 12 team probably, I think, is needed. One of my big arguments for the 4 is that a team who could realistically win has never once been excluded, including this year. I think with the 12, I don't think you're really going to see any big change. I don't think that the 4 team has changed who is becoming the national champion. I don't think we've encountered a year where there's truly been 4 teams who are neck and neck for it. I'm excited for the 12. I think it helps the ACC and the Big 12 more. I understand your point you're making, Bobby, about margin of error when it comes to a 4-team playoff or a BCS type selection. But I think, you go into a 12, maybe it is better to be Florida State and to be in a little bit of a softer league where if you do, you go undefeated, there's no question they're going to be included. Or you drop a game, to Miami or something, you're probably still in versus, have a good team in a tougher league. Say, obviously Penn State would have been included. And then you get into all the, the subjectiveness again, and it probably gets I think it'll get even nastier, honestly, now that I think about the 12 team, because you got undefeated group of 5 teams, and then you're going to be putting in 2-loss Penn State, 2-loss, they have 2 or 3 losses at Ole Miss, 2-loss Oklahoma and stuff, just because brands. I don't know.
But hypothetically, Oklahoma State, if they beat Texas, they would have been in next year's playoff. So, what you're saying is pretty correct. There are paths to get in there. It opens up a lot, and it.
Well, what I meant was people are always going to be screwed. The 12 team doesn't stop someone being screwed. Like the only playoff system that doesn't screw everyone over is just the entire season is single elimination, win and move on.
Right, but hypothetically,
reasons for why they were screwed out of it, rather than Florida State. There's only like kind of some abstract stuff for them.
Yeah, it would be like, yeah, that's the thing. If Florida State getting screwed out of 4, it wouldn't be the same as hypothetically OU getting screwed out of 12.
No, I was talking about OU
job,
screwing other people. Like we would be the Bama in that situation. We would be the bigger brand with the worst resume. It's branding our way in over.
People will always get left out. People get left out on the bubble in March Madness. That's just the nature of things. People always bring it up.
Yeah, but when it's 64 versus 4, it's just it feels a little bit different. There's not going to be an undefeated team left out because there aren't going to be 11 undefeated teams, and then the 12th undefeated team gets left out.
Well,
it's just mathematically impossible. But I don't know. I think that's kind of. Do we have any more thoughts on this? I think kind of exhausted.
No, I agree with I agree with you if you think that Alabama should have been left out. I agree with you if you think Florida State should have been left out. I don't agree with you if you think Texas should have been left out. I don't agree with you if you think Georgia should have been in. I mean, Georgia should have been in. Yes.
Yeah. I think my closing thought is I don't think Bama should be there. At the same time, we were just selecting who was going to embarrass Florida State. Like, was it going to be Michigan or was it going to be Georgia? Like,
remember when Michigan State went to the playoffs?
Oh yeah, they got shut out. Oh god, weird times that was. Weird times.
Remember when Cincinnati went to the playoffs?
Now they actually did better.
Yes,
since he did do better.
But Michigan State would have probably been similar to what Florida State would have done.
I don't 100% feel comfortable as an OU fan talking about teams embarrassing themselves in the playoffs.
Yes, that is true. That
is true. Glass house. that is very much a glass house situation with OU. But,
I will say, we didn't bring this up. I do not understand why TCU is getting so much flack over. People are blaming TCU like they didn't beat this Michigan. It
was just one true ball not knower in Stephen A. And it just opened up.
No, I've seen that take all over.
I've seen it all
TCU,
over.
Blame TCU for Florida State. Blame TCU. That doesn't make any sense. First off, TCU wasn't undefeated. They just lost to Kansas State. Like, there was smoke. People should have known there was fire there when they lost.
They beat Michigan.
Yeah, and then it's not like they went and they showed up and they got embarrassed like Notre Dame does every year. Like, they beat Michigan.
They beat a really good Michigan team. Like,
very convincingly.
They earned their way to that national championship. It's not, it's not like they played the game and then some committee member ran out of the field and was like, wait, no, never mind, Michigan, you move on. We can't have this. Or, in post, they're like, you know what, Ohio State gave it a good run. This is actually the national title. It's dumb. It's dumb. So, I don't know. There will always be ball not knowers on, talking out their ass on this one. But
oh yeah, you'll hear one here shortly on Blake when he gets back on this podcast.
Yeah,
I don't know. We just bring up the TCU thing, and he'll go on a 30-minute thing about TCU. Back to OU though. I'm glad we're going to the Alamo Bowl. You know what I love? Flies, and there's no better city in the U.S. to be swarmed by flies than the city of flies, San Antonio.
Is that a thing?
I've never been there, and it's not been just fly heaven.
Have y'all talked to anyone so far that is planning to go to this game?
No.
Exactly. Yeah.
No.
So that's just what OU is thinking about this game. So a lot of OU fans were very, very, passionate, but not a lot of us are excited to go to this game because we were hoping for more this season. And that is why, Bobby, that this season was a failure.
It's not a failure. Oh my god. Okay, we're not doing this. We're not doing this. We need to wrap this show. Because it wasn't. It was a very okay season that had disappointing moments.
Very okay is a failure in my book.
It's not okay, fine. It's a failure in the overall sense of OU football, what you want out of everything. However, given context, given massive amounts of context, it was a success.
Okay, yeah, you can sign us out of this show. I'll let it be.
Well, that's all we have for this. Our initial reaction to OU's bowl against Arizona, college football playoff, all of that. Bowl season just beginning, folks. We're about to launch our our bowl picks. And
Woo!
guys, as usual, you can sign up and pick along with us. I don't know if we have a prize or anything.
Yes, let's do it again. We always do a free entry, but we put up some money. I say we do it again.
Yeah, we do technically have Schooner Pod funds, I guess.
We'll put in the Schooner Pod funds. Just let it be known that we also lost $100 in roulette of Schooner Pod funds last year. So we are running a little low.
We are running low. We may or may not have any funds. I don't know.
Bobby.
No,
what have you done with them?
All of our funds were in. Well, first of all, we haven't been getting paid for a while since TPPN went under.
Mike
I
thought we had some leftover.
No, we do actually. No, we do.
No, you were supposed to pay back after you lost money with it on the slot machine.
I've been paying. The Schooner Pod has related activities. Like we're paying to host our podcast, for example. We're paying for. That's. I don't know. We need to honestly set up an LLC.
Inflation.
We need to set up an actual body that makes sense because my personal funds in the Schooner Pod are intermingling too much. Because I don't know.
In-flight Wi-Fi was a thing.
In-flight I did pay back for the in-flight.
There was that very delicious gyro that was delicious, but I only had one bite of, and that really annoyed Jameson that one time.
Yeah, that was on you, Ty, though.
All of y'all.
I wasn't that hungry. I realized I wasn't that hungry.
All of you listeners have been with us since the beginning and gotten us the small amounts of money that we got through our DraftKings sponsorship. We've spent it on some stupid stuff, so I hope you all are happy.
Thanks for listening. We've done dumb stuff with this. But
our StreamYard's free because I'm still acting like I'm a student and they give free StreamYard.
Which is great.
Woo woo.
Yep. That's funny. Yeah, I'll run the numbers. I'm sure we have.
I realized I just said that out loud. Ooh, I hope StreamYard doesn't hear this.
Oh no! Oh god!
Because they listen. They're always on my YouTube ads.
Yeah, they're always on our YouTube ads, and not only that, we're literally using it right now.
It's okay.
No, we will find some sort of financial cost. Free to join. I'll reactivate the Bowl Mania and put it in this link if you're watching on repeat. If not, then just wait for the next show. Ty, I'm sure you and I will talk some Army Navy this week. Obviously an amazing game. Always fun talking about that one. And yeah, look, it's going to be fun. We're not done just yet. So plenty of exciting stuff down the pipe. So, from, all of us, can't wait. So anyways, for me, Jameson and Ty, this has been the Schooner Pod. We will see y'all very soon to talk about the Bulls, Army Navy, all this stuff, whatever comes up next. We hope you all have a good week, everyone, and Boomer Sooner.